Have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? It's this theory that suggests that a small and seemingly random event can cause a major change in circumstances. The reason they call it this is because the classic example of it is this idea that the tiny amount of wind that is produced by a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon could create a chain of events that could ultimately produce a hurricane 1,000 miles away. Think that's possible? Well, whether you subscribe to this theory or not, I think we all agree that our lives today are the results of a series of many small decisions and a handful of big decisions that are shaping our destiny. What I'm wondering is if you are aware of the factors that are influencing yours. Friends, I think we all realize that one decision can drastically change our lives. Now, think about this. According to psychologists, 35,000 decisions are made by each of us every single day. Of course, not every one of those decisions are major decisions. Some are insignificant. What will you eat for lunch today? Will it be Chick-fil-A or Cane's or Dave's Hot Chicken? What will you wear to work on Monday? Will it be jeans or khakis, a skirt or a dress? Some decisions aren't really that important. What will you do this weekend? Go to the beach or chill at the crib or clean out the garage? It's unlikely that decisions like these will alter the course of the rest of your life. But if you're making 35,000 decisions a day, then mixed in with those choices are a few that are very important to you. Decisions like whether or not to apply for that promotional opportunity or work or stay put where you are. That choice to go out with that dude or not. The decision to go to church. That choice to ignore a situation or to respond to it. As you make these important decisions in life, have you ever stopped to consider what is influencing your choices and decisions? There are perhaps 100 answers to that question, but ultimately, I think that most of our choices in life are often impacted by one of three things. It's either our past, our present, or our future. More than I think we realize it, we make decisions either persuaded by our past, or pushed by our present, or propelled by our destiny. And over the course of these next few weeks, I want to invite you to consider which of these three are really driving your decisions and ultimately driving your destiny. Speaking of the butterfly effect, I can't think of a better example of this idea than a story of a 17-year-old kid in the book of Genesis who wakes up one morning after having a dream and decides to tell his brothers about it. That seemingly insignificant decision to talk about it sets off a chain reaction of events over a period of 13 years that culminates with him becoming the prime minister of one of the most powerful nations on earth. Let me introduce you to him in Genesis chapter 37. This is what it says beginning in verse 1. It says, Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Now, as we see, Joseph was the youngest of 12 brothers, born to Israel, which is also known as Jacob in the Bible. And as a baby of the family, I think there's three things that we clearly see in this story. One, we can tell that Joseph was the favorite. Two, there's evidence that Joseph was a pretty spoiled kid. And three, we recognize that his brothers hated him. How much did they hate him? Well, friends, let me show you. A little bit later in verse 18, we find that Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dathan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Let me ask you something, friends. Which do you think has the greatest impact on our lives? Is it our past experiences, our present situation, or things that could potentially happen in our future? I think to a large degree, we are a product of our past. And though both good and bad experiences shape our lives, wouldn't you agree that it's the difficult experiences that have the greatest influence on us? And of all the difficult experiences we've had in life, Would you also agree that the ones that we didn't see coming are the ones that stay with us the longest? Now, take a moment and think about some of the major experiences that you've gone through that have drastically changed your life. Now consider how these experiences affect your decisions in the present and how they have the potential to influence your choices well into the future. I think if Joseph had been asked about the experience that most drastically changed his life, I'm sure he would have pointed to that moment in Genesis 37, verse 28, when his brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Now think about that. One day this boy is the favorite son of a rich father. Next, he's the property of a slave owner. One day he wakes up in the morning with dreams that gave him hope about his future, but he laid down that night in complete despair. One day he's living a life of comfort. The next moment, every day is a struggle for him. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us much about the psychological or the emotional effect of this drastic change in his life, but most of us have been in situations before where from one moment to the next, our lives have been turned upside down, similar to his. For some of us, that event came to pass with the sudden death of a loved one, a mother or father, or someone close to us who was taken from us unexpectedly. Others of us carry the dark and painful memory of being taken advantage of early in life. You know, statistically speaking, 1 in 3 people have been victims of some form of abuse as a child. And the odds are even higher that the person that betrayed our trust was not a stranger, but someone in our own family. You may think you were the only one, but many of us look into our past and find memories of abuse or rejection, infidelity, abandonment, or neglect. So I don't think it comes as a surprise to any of us that to some degree or another, our past continues to impact our decisions even today. The question I want you to consider is how much of an impact on today and tomorrow should yesterday be allowed to have? Are the experiences from yesterday keeping you from living today? Are past fears and insecurities holding you back from new endeavors? Are you hesitant to develop new relationships, afraid to explore new opportunities, or fearful to take new risks because of failures or hardships that you've experienced? How do you think the adversity of Joseph's past impacted his future? You know, it wouldn't be surprising if he had become a bitter person who spent the rest of his days suspicious of everyone and never allowing himself to be put in a vulnerable position by anyone. I don't think we would blame him if we found that he spent his life anticipating the opportunity to seek revenge against his brothers, or that he could have just given up on life and decided to live the rest of it as a defeated person. But here's the thing. We don't see any evidence that he allowed the tragedy or the bitterness or rejection of his past to hold him back from his present. Read Genesis 39 with me. There's evidence there that shows us that he wasn't held back by his past. This is what it says. It says, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken them there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. Wow, friends, do you see any evidence that suggests that Joseph moped around Potiphar's house complaining about the injustice that he had faced? Does it look like he spent a lot of time shaking his fist at God, crying, why me? Or staying up late at night plotting for how he would escape and exact revenge on his brothers? Do you see any signs that he would walk around Potiphar's house bitter or stubborn or rebellious or lazy as a slave? The answer is no. And you may ask yourself, why not? And you know what? Honestly, I don't know. All I do know is this. In that season of his life as a slave, whenever he was told to do a task, he did it. And apparently he did it well. When he was asked a question, he answered the question and he responded well. When he was offered an opportunity to lead a project, he apparently led that project well. When he was asked to manage Potiphar's home and business, he did that well too. And what's my point here? Friends, Joseph's past, whether it was his happy life as a favorite son of his father or the hurt and betrayal of his brothers, neither of these aspects of his former life kept him from making the right decisions in what was in Genesis 39, his present reality. So let me wrap up by asking you a few questions about your life and specifically about your past. Friends, how much longer are you going to dwell on the mistakes of your past? How many more times are you going to relive that tragedy or meditate on that bitterness? How much longer are you going to focus on that revenge or refuse to forgive? How much longer are you going to allow that which happened yesterday to determine your tomorrow? Friends, what would happen if you decided today that moving forward, you were no longer going to make your decisions in life pushed and persuaded by the past, but driven by your destiny? Today we talked about the power of our past on impacting our destiny. Next week we'll look at how our present circumstances influences it.